Hello, everyone. Welcome to another new episode of the Masters with Harshith podcast. Thank you for showing your love on the previous one. We had over 600 views, and we have about a total of 50 subscribers on YouTube. And I'm hoping that the number does grow in the coming few episodes. Today we have with us Sadhna, who is an incoming MEM student at Dartmouth University. Welcome, Sadhna. Thank you for taking your time out today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. Happy to be here.
Great. So how are you finding the US? And I think you've been here before as well, right? Like, I mean, is this your first time? How are you finding it?
Yeah, so I've come here like to visit like on vacation a couple of times.
Right,
I haven't really begun school immediately. I'll be moving next week, this weekend actually. Um,
right.
but yeah, I love it here. Nothing like home, which is Chennai for me, of course. But it's still a nice
Absolutely.
change, and people here are very welcoming, and I'm very excited to be in school too. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's just start off, Sadhna. So MEM is a field that has, become very popular in the last 5 to 10 years, I would say. So what exactly is the MEM? If you were explaining it to someone who has no idea, maybe a child, what would MEM actually mean?
Okay. So the MEM, that is the Master of Engineering Management, is this program that acts as a bridge between maybe technology and business. That's an easy way to put it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's particularly directed at engineers who want to get like a broader understanding of of how an organization works or of how managing people works, so that they can go to roles that aren't extremely necessarily technical and roles that have a broader perspective.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what made you pick MEM? When was that realization? You would have had your peers, who are going to technical programs or things like that. So, what made you decide that I want to do an MEM?
Yeah. So right out of college, I am actually a computer science major. I did my undergraduate degree in computer science and engineering. I wasn't sure exactly where what I wanted to do or where I wanted to be. So I decided to spend a couple of years just getting work experience, taking things slowly and figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like. And my job was that of a software developer. So a couple of years into my job, like around 1 year in, I started realizing that while I liked it and I was very comfortable, it was fun, but I felt like I could do more and I wanted to try something different. So that started having like that got me exploring options, and I was looking at courses that could allow me to transition out of software development into something different, into roles that allow you to do
Health fusion,
have a
right?
have a multifaceted aspect to it, right? Where you're not just necessarily coding every day. So when I explored those options, I came across two courses that could give me what I wanted. One was an MBA and one was an MEM. Given my profile, given the amount of work ex I had, I decided to stick to an MEM.
Got it. So, Sadhana, that brings us to the next question, right? How did you decide that you don't want to do an MBA and you want to do an MEM? Like, how are the applicants typically different? How is the course structure usually different?
Mhm. So this to answer this question, I think there's another aspect that I would like to bring in. One
Mm-hmm.
is also geographically, like an MBA
Okay.
in India, which is where I'm from,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to an MBA in Europe and America, and the Masters in Engineering Management program, which is something, as far as I know, that is only popular in US. And yeah, so I'm going to restrict that to America alone.
Sure.
So why I decided to do like how is an MEM different from an MBA? I think there are like around a lot of aspects in which they're different. One is the
Mm-hmm.
duration of the course. Typically, an MBA is usually 2 years. Of course, there are a few MBAs that also offer 1 year programs. An MEM is around like 1.5 years.
Right.
A few shorter, few longer, but it's not as maybe hectic as you would consider a two-year MBA program to be.
Right.
Work experience of professionals entering or doing an MEM is very different from people entering an MBA. If
Mm-hmm.
you were to do an MBA in Europe and America, you would typically need 5 years of work ex, unless
Right.
you have like unless you've done that much
Something
work,
crazy. Yeah.
unless you've actually done the equivalent of 5 years of work during your
Correct.
education and a couple of years. In
Right.
India, of course, the work experience requirement is a lot lesser. If you're thinking of your
Okay.
IIMs, you might not even need WorkX. If you're thinking of
Right.
ISB, 2 years is enough.
Correct.
But for an MEM in US, you don't
Right.
necessarily need work. So the average work experience of the classroom is significantly lesser. It goes
Mm-hmm.
from 0 to even 8.
Right.
So that's something else to keep in mind between who your peers would be.
Right.
And when we're talking about, um, okay, so I'll just tell you the differences and then I'll tell you why I chose an MEM
Sure.
over an
Sure. Sure. No worries.
when we're talking about differences again between an MEM and MBA in the US specifically,
Mm-hmm.
there's something visa, something you would have to consider. As an immigrant who's going to America, you might not necessarily get to work for that long. Like to get something called the OPT visa, or like to get
Expansion.
the attempts at the H1B, you need a SEM certified course.
Right.
And that's something that an MEM offers you. Most MBAs in US also offer that to you, like your M7 MBAs, all of them have a way to work around it. They now give
Right.
you certified course,
Okay.
but not all. Like only the major ones do that in America. So that's
Okay.
something to keep in mind if you're going as an immigrant. Like
Right.
how long will you have to work if you need to? And
So I
then
think you're referring to the 2-year STEM OPT extension, right? That's what
yes,
STEM. Yes, you got.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So and
Awesome.
all MEMs do that because that's M certified. They are technically an engineering course,
Correct.
while all
Correct.
MBAs don't necessarily do that.
Got it.
Um,
So guys,
yeah,
just to give people more clarity on what exactly it is. So once you're done with your program, I think by default you can work for 1 year regardless of your degree. But if you're a STEM program, you have another 2 years that extends into the 1 year, so you can work for 3 years without securing the H-1B visa. So the H-1B visa is a lottery process. So in case if you do not even get that, you can still work for 3 years, provided you have continuous employment.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
That sounds
please,
good.
please. Yeah,
No, that sounds great.
yeah,
And that's something you want to keep in mind if you're studying
correct,
outside of India and you're an Indian.
right,
And then there's, of course, with respect to how the courses actually differ, an MEM is more tech oriented than an MBA would be. An MEM is
right.
kind of like um, colleges started this as a program to they saw that there was a deficit in leadership in the tech industry, and they wanted people to
Mm-hmm.
fill that role. They wanted to get managers who were qualified enough to lead a few things. So that's why
Right.
they saw that gap in the market and decided to create this course. So this course aims at making managers or people who bridge that gap within the tech industry specifically. So most of the job opportunities you're going to get post an MEM or even an MSNE, which is a management science and engineering degree. Even
Right.
that course, you would probably end up going to the tech industry in different roles, of course. And the course structure, of course, is different between the two, right? Between an MBA and an MEM. An MEM, you will have to take a couple of engineering courses also.
Right.
You post an MEM, you can even go back to software development. You can even go back to engineering. Uh, post an MEM, post an MBA, very few. I don't know
It does
people
not
who've
make a
done.
lot of sense. It does not make a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
it doesn't
Provided in
make a
the
lot.
US, how expensive the MBA program is, I think you'd want to
Yeah,
stick to. Got it. I
yeah,
think that was a very good point.
yeah.
Right. At least not. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the main differences between the two. Like your course structure
Mm-hmm.
itself in an MBA is very different. You get to take a lot of courses from the business school also.
Mm-hmm.
Usually in that university, they'll allow you to take it from the business school also. So you will have classes with MBA students, but you'll
Right.
also major in engineering. You get to decide which specialty, like which engineering courses you want to choose. So you
This
can
could you,
this
right?
yeah.
Could you give a few examples of what kind of engineering courses you're talking about? Maybe if that could be possible.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, for instance, Dartmouth, they have like a few standard courses that everyone has to take. Of course, you have to
Right.
take like a couple of stats courses, you'll have to take marketing
Right.
courses,
Okay.
and a basic product management introduction course. Data analytics is also something that's covered. So, data analytic courses are also ones which your CS grads sometimes take. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's an example of courses that you could expect when you're
Got it.
doing
So
your
you're actually doing graduate level engineering courses and courses from the management school sitting with MBA students.
exactly,
So
yeah, you're doing a combination of both of them.
correct. That sounds
So
awesome.
that's the difference. Yeah, that's the difference in course structure between the two. Now,
Right.
to answer the first part of your question about why I decided to do an MEM as opposed to an
Right.
MBA, I actually did have an admit into an MBA school, as you already know, Harshit. I got into
Yes.
IST through the Young Leaders
Correct.
program, which is how
So
I,
fun fact, that's where we met. Yes, that's where we actually met. Yeah, yeah, please,
yeah.
please. Yeah.
So yeah, I met Harshit on a learning weekend in
Mohali, I think.
Mohali, right? Yeah, you didn't come to the
Yeah,
Hyderabad.
yeah,
Mohali,
yeah.
and that's where we connected. Um, it was a hard decision, like not going ahead. So I had a couple of options, right? At
Mhm.
this junction in my career, I felt like I did not have the profile to do an MBA in America or like in Europe.
Mhm.
For second, like number two, I felt like they were exceptionally also expensive. Like it's like 200K tuition alone,
Yeah,
which
I think
changes a
that's
lot.
the breaking factor for a lot of people who do not want to pursue an MBA in the US because
Yeah,
whatever university you go to, majority at least the decent ones they touch 200,000
yeah,
dollars, which is like 1.6 crores in India, which is a lot of money.
yeah. So that was something else to consider. And yeah, so so at that point, I think my options were doing an MBA in India,
Mm-hmm.
versus uh, doing an MEM abroad to kind of get me to a similar place, like allow me to
Right,
switch career, right?
right.
And the reason, I don't know what the right decision is, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
for everyone. If you're sure that ultimately you want to be in India at some point, then it obviously makes there's no better place to go to than a couple of free
Correct.
schools in India, one of them being ISB.
Right.
For me, I think the classroom size was also a big differentiator. Like in ISB,
Mm-hmm.
there were almost 1,000 students, but in the course that I was picking, there were around 50. So that was a big differentiator for me. And while I did ultimately want to come back home, I also wanted to have like an international experience. I felt that was something that even my family really um, encouraged. They said, go out for a couple of years, make friends and study in places that you wouldn't really have access to, um,
Correct. Correct.
and then you can always figure something out later and find opportunities to come back home. So I
Absolutely. I
think
think
that,
that's something, yeah, even I reverberate with a lot because
yeah.
you can go out, you can always come back in. So going out is always a difficult part. Once you go out, there's always the opportunity to come back in.
Yeah, so in
Yeah,
that sense, I wanted to like have an education that allows me to meet even more people, or like, and an Indian MBA, while very diverse, that like ISB has a great classroom in terms of working
correct.
professionals and in terms of where they come from and their age differences and all. You learn a lot, right? People are really smart there, but I just thought I wanted to also go to a place which was slightly more global. So
Correct.
that was one of the reasons I made this decision. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. So Sadhna, I mean, I can completely understand, like how MEM is different from an MBA and why it made sense to you. But what was your background like? So what made, like in the bigger picture of things, what made your story fit into the MEM thing? What was it that you had done and stuff?
Got it. Okay, so I'm a computer science engineer from
Correct.
SSI College of Engineering.
Right.
It's affiliated to like Shivnada University in Delhi, and Anna University is the university in Tamil Nadu.
Got it.
And in college, I interned a couple of times. Like my first internship was in in the space, like in computer vision. I did an internship
Okay.
because I wanted to get my hands dirty with ML.
Right.
Uh, I was trying to do image processing on cows
Mhm.
in some farm. It was a very fun internship, but that
Okay.
was the first internship's focus. And then after that, I
Right.
also dabbled my hands with front end development.
Hmm.
That was something I did one summer also. And then I finally decided to work in Citibank.
Oh, nice. Okay.
In Citibank as a software developer. So I was a
Right.
microservices developer for Citi, for Citi's North American banking division. So I would write
Right.
code for their cards, or their cards and customer service assistance
Got it.
in their North American consumer banking division. So
Right.
that's what I did for almost 2 years actually, post my
Hmm.
undergrad. Um, and yeah, so I'm full on. I mean, I sound full on like a techie, but I did a lot more in
Correct.
college. It was kind of what prompted me to explore different options. Like on one hand, I did code, and
Hmm.
I liked it, but I also was pretty heavy on extracurriculars, as they say.
Right.
I played basketball in college. I was part of the theater troupe in college. I headed
Right.
our Model United Nations conference.
Right.
Like I was the secretary general of that, and that was something
Right.
that honestly got me thinking or exploring other options. Like I was very comfortable being in that position and kind of working with people across different departments, like people who did finance, people who did delegate affairs, people who did marketing. So we all would work together, and that was, I think, one of the times I was most excited about what I did. Like
Right.
adrenaline was kicking in every day, and there were deadlines to meet. It wasn't the MUN part of it that was particularly interesting to me. The
But
cause did
managing
matter, but
the right.
managing and like meeting people, like interdisciplinary functions or roles, was
Right.
something that I realized I enjoyed a lot in that process. Yeah.
Got it. So, Sadhna, I get your background and the MEM and stuff. So, what are the career outcomes one can expect out of MEM, and what career outcome are you like? Do you know what you want to do right now, or are you exploring things? How is it like?
Yeah. So the career outcomes that someone can expect out of an MEM. Like typically, there are people who get into product management, into project management, into data analytics, operations, tech consulting, management consulting. A couple of people even get into core software development, or
Mm-hmm.
they become ML engineers.
Right.
So this is like the variety of a lot. One or two also go into financial engineering.
Right.
So it's really a course that kind of get can take you anywhere. It depends on how you use the course and what you do
Right.
with your time in that course, like who you network with, what kind of job opportunities you're seeking, how you're building your profile. So it's sort of like an MBA of sorts, right? You have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of creative opportunities in
Right.
different fields. Um, what I'm looking forward, like what I'm thinking of exploring is somewhere along the line of my at City, actually, I realized that while I liked working on microservices, um, I couldn't really see the impact I directly made, on the customer end.
Right.
That was one thing. I wanted a role that was slightly more, maybe not customer facing, but yeah, at least a little more direct
Little.
with respect to,
Right.
yeah, with understanding impact, right? Something I did realize was there was this um, really senior person in our team who was making who was the person who was in charge of making these calls, right? He would say, do we have to invest in like millions of dollars into getting new hardware for our customer service assistants to make the system faster, or
Mm-hmm.
can I think of other options? And then he found out that he spoke to a bunch of tech people, and all of us told him that we can rebuild the system and like reduce these many milliseconds on the system. And then he made that decision about whether they want to invest in this or that, and then it became a 2-year software development project that we all took on, right? So I
Right.
like that. Yeah, that those are the kind of roles I was looking at, like a role that allows you to, make like look at the bigger picture and make decisions. So I'm thinking
Right.
of exploring market research. That's something I felt like I might be interested in, and product like end to end, from
Got it.
start to finish. Any role that allows me that flexibility, and maybe even tech consulting or management consulting, right? Things that
Right.
allow you to solve problems uh, in this kind of a way. Is those are the roles I'm looking for right now. Very
Right.
broad. It's not like very specific.
Correct. I
I
mean,
know.
you've got time to figure out. Maybe once you go to college, you pick up courses, you talk to people that your perspective would change, or you'd be able to like concretely decide on one. Makes
Yeah,
a lot of sense.
yeah. So one thing that also about this course that I'm doing that helps is the fact that it has like an internship period after the
Oh,
first year.
okay.
It ties into my first answer also. Like ISB, the other option I had as the MBA course that I got into, it
Mm-hmm.
was a 1-year course, so I couldn't intern over the summer, right, to figure
Right.
things out. This
Right.
gives me the opportunity to intern. Maybe I can take up a tech consulting internship and see if I like that. If I don't like that, I can get into product. So that flexibility is there.
Right.
So that's also something I'm planning on using in this course.
Makes a lot of sense. Sadhna, so Dartmouth is dubbed as like, the number one MEM in the world. So I'm not sure if how many people believe it, but I think that's probably because of the selectivity in the class size. Because compared to the other MEM programs, Dartmouth takes the smallest class, it's extremely selective, and the career outcome of students is quite exceptional too. And it's an Ivy League to add on to all of that. So, what were your options like when you were applying for your MEM? What other options did you look at, and like what is the program structure at Dartmouth looking like for you, or like for someone in general?
Got it. So what were my options when I applied for the MEM? So because I already had this admit, an MBA
Mm-hmm.
admit, I was a lot more, I guess, that safety net was sort of there. So I didn't apply to
Correct.
too many universities. When I started my search, in fact, I was just thinking about what could possibly even match up to this expectation of what ISB would offer to me. Is there
Correct.
anything that
Correct.
sounds remotely as interesting? So when I did that,
Right.
I started looking at just a couple of courses. One was
Mm-hmm.
Stanford Management Science and Engineering program,
The MSc
uh,
program, right?
yeah, C program, Masters of MSNE. And then the next one I found that was also interesting was Columbia's MSNE,
Correct.
and of course Dartmouth's MEM. So these three kind of made the cut for me.
Right.
One, of course, because of the selectivity and because of how difficult it is to get into these courses.
Right.
Columbia's had this really interesting option where you could work on an operations consulting course for like a year, which was
Oh,
something that
okay.
was fascinating to me because as somebody who comes from tech, right, I get
Mm.
to work on a project like with three different companies, um, like three, like one small size, one medium size, one large size company, and like get that work experience in during the period of that course. So that was also something that was interesting to me.
Right.
So these MSNE and MEM programs kind of these three gave me the opportunity to learn a lot during the course. They also had, like, Dartmouth has tie-ups with a lot of business organizations that allow you to take projects. Even for your tech consulting, we have something called like tech assessment. That's a course that you
Mm-hmm.
have, and it happens over a couple of terms, and you work on a project for quite some time. But if it's really good, you can get funding for it. You can, get it incubated in
That's
college.
nice.
They give you, Dartmouth especially gives you a lot of, like, it depends on how you use it, right? It's
Right.
a very small cohort, very small,
Right.
like, faculty help you a lot. So if you decide to go ahead with an idea, like, they'll help you they help you connect with investors and a lot of people who are pretty important. They have those connections, and I think
Correct. I think they're
I
also
zeroed
known to be giving grants as well, right? They give a lot of grants to students who I think probably along the lines of what you said, those who want to continue it after the masters. Because I've seen people, like a couple of people at least, who've gotten grants from Dartmouth itself.
Yeah.
So that
So
makes
that's
sense.
yeah, and Ivy League university usually does tend to be a little more generous than your
Correct.
other universities, and
Right.
Dartmouth is kind of known for that. So those were the reasons I zeroed in on these three courses, and these were the only ones
Right.
I applied to. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay. So Sadhna, what is your program structure like? Do you have any specializations, or like do you have tracks to choose from, or how does it work?
Yeah, you do have tax to choose from. Like, you can get into product management, you can get into operations, you can get into optimize. I think data analytics and optimization is one more track you can choose, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not as indicative. Like, it really doesn't matter in the bigger scheme of things. Your
Okay,
track
got it.
is also not something you have to choose at the beginning of the course. It can just be based on
Okay,
the electives that you take. You've
you can
matched the
get it in that.
criteria for a particular track, and you can have multiple. You can have multiple majors also at the end of it.
Got it. Sadhna, how many years is this course? Is it a 1 year program? Is it a 2 year program? Or what is it like?
Yeah, so this is a 15-month program.
Okay,
So it starts in September. Like, for instance, I'm starting September 2023 and I'll end
right.
December 2024.
Got
This is inclusive of a mandatory internship over the summer period.
it. Got it.
So, as this is a course requirement in Dartmouth's MEM, which is not necessarily there in a lot of other MSNE or MEM programs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they don't say you have to do it, but over here you do get credits for having completed an internship over the summer. It has to
Right.
be, I think, a 3-month internship. Yeah.
Right. Crazy. Okay. That I think has covered a lot of different questions as well. So, in general, how much should a student expecting, like coming to Dartmouth, expect their tuition and their living expenses to be, and like how are you kind of funding that?
Yeah. So, yeah, the tuition comes to, I think, 85K
Mm-hmm.
for Dartmouth. Like, the tuition
Right.
alone comes to 85K, including
Sounds
living
like
expense.
a
Yeah.
typical
Yeah,
Ivy
graduate.
Ivy
The same for
number.
Columbia. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
same. It's the
I
same number. Yeah,
Yeah, post the admissions thing, I was just running the numbers for Columbia at Dartmouth. I'm like, okay, cool. This really doesn't make a difference. Uh,
correct. That was
but
same thing for me. So I was comparing CMU and like Columbia, and I was like,
okay.
those are the two most expensive places I'd applied to, and they were like
Mhm.
turning out almost the same with respect to tuition. I was like, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but as you know, living is a lot. Living can really change things. Living expenses can
Correct.
change things. So for anyone
Right.
who's applying, I would really recommend you to not just go by the tuition expenses number. Like, you have to do your research and figure out how the whole program will cost,
Right.
how much the whole program will cost. This comes to around 120K for like the 15-month course. If you
Right.
check it out online, even on Dartmouth's page, it says it's around 120K.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one thing that Dartmouth does really well is they have a great financial aid program.
Okay.
And this is something you have to keep in mind when you're applying itself. Because people who apply for they do this through a CSS form. I'm not exactly sure what the full form of CSS is, but
Okay.
that's like an option. They'll In your application itself, they'll tell you that that is an option to apply for financial aid. You should go do it. It's an independent
Okay.
organization. You enter all your
Right.
financial data, and they will decide if you're eligible or not. And this is a need-based
Right.
financial aid. It's not a scholarship. Um,
Right, right. So I think that's a very important classification for like people who do not know. A need base is basically when you say that you need the funds to do your education. A scholarship is given based on merit. So these are two different things. Right.
yeah, I think especially coming from India, right? Like, we tend to use scholarship as the word for
Yeah, the
everything.
generic term. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But this is a need-based financial aid
Hmm.
application, and when you apply, like, it has no weighing, no weightage on your actual application. It doesn't matter
Right.
if you applied for it or didn't apply for it. If you get an admit, you get an admit regardless. And once
Okay.
you get the admit, if you're eligible for financial aid, they'll give it. Dartmouth caps it at 40% of tuition.
Oh,
So the
beautiful.
max
Okay.
you can get is 40% of tuition. I got that.
Oh, nice.
And
That's like $36,000 right there. I think, right?
yeah, so my
40%.
tuition right now for the first year is 36K. Like from 60K at
Nice.
60K for the first year, it's 36K for the first year. And
Right.
again, for second year, you'll have to reapply, like based on your finances and all. It might not be the 40%, it'll probably be lesser because you interned over the summer.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but that is something that Dartmouth offers. And I think I'm really not sure if other universities do this. I remember doing my
Right.
research,
No,
other
Columbia, at
universities.
least for computer science, I do not think they do anything like that. It's if you
Yeah,
can afford it, you're right, kind of a thing.
yeah. That was
Yeah.
actually one of like I remember writing to Columbia. I even applied for a couple of scholarships that they had
Right.
offered, and they were being a little, yeah, that was very little leeway, right? They didn't
Correct.
offer
Yeah, Columbia
very low.
says you can go outside, get your scholarship, or you can apply for on-campus scholarships as well. But they're very competitive. Number one and number two, they're mostly for American citizens or like people from marginalized communities and things like that. Not for like people like me who are the general engineering male students from India. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
makes
same.
sense.
So yeah, so Dartmouth does have this option. So that's one of the ways I'm funding it.
Right.
And one more thing to keep in mind with respect to need-based financial aid is like it doesn't matter even if you think you might not be applicable. Like their category for need-based is really, really high.
Hmm.
Something to keep in mind. Like the only
I
people
think
who
that's a,
technically
right,
would
right.
not
So
take
that's
advantage would be
yeah,
like extremely well-to-do rich people, right? So
right,
my advice to anyone would be apply. Like even if you don't apply during the application cycle, you can always write to them once you get an admit and say it's difficult for you to meet it, for you to pay tuition, and they get back to you later. Like if that funds available and all, they'll tell you the process. You'll have to fill up the form
right.
again, but that's obviously not going to be at the 40%. It's going to be a lot lesser. Um,
I think this was a super, super useful thing. I had no idea Dartmouth does that. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I had spoken to a couple of seniors who
Okay,
also had similar things, right? Like who'd
right.
gotten way
Correct,
before
correct.
that.
I think again, guys, please talk to your seniors. Talk to not just your seniors, people in the university. Reach out to them via LinkedIn. If you can reach out 10 people, at least one or two would probably reply. So try your best shot.
Yeah. And yeah, but even, even if 40% is not, it's still going to be a lot, right? Given how Ivy Leagues cost you.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
yeah, the rest is the usual, like personal finances, student loan, a combination of all of that. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. So Sadhna, when like like through everything, how did you prepare differently? Did you prepare anything for the application? Like, I mean, did you do anything different while you were at college? Like, did you go out of your way to like do certain things because you thought that would help you in your application process? Because select few people do that, or was it like I'm just doing it because I like it and this is gonna fit into the bigger scheme of things kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. So for me, yeah, what did I do for the application process? Honestly, like a lot of the preparation was already done years ago, right? Like it wasn't like in the sense you can't sit there in September when you're applying in September and be like, oh, what can I do in 1 month? That's
Right.
not how it
Right.
works.
Correct.
Right? So I actually decided I was going to apply, I think, only in that December, like November, December before, and the deadlines were around December, and it was a very late decision.
Guys, do not
And that's
recommend. I do not recommend that. Please take some time out.
Yeah, and I was also that's also like I was only applying to three universities,
Correct.
so it made sense. Like it wasn't that crucial for me, right?
Right.
So it was fine. But yeah, that being said, so what I did differently was, yeah, I'd already done a lot in college.
Mm.
I'd already done a lot, at work or on the side also. I was into like a cause that I've always been into is like education, and
Mm-hmm.
I spend like all my Saturdays for the longest time. I think it's been 4 years. I just recently stopped because I shifted countries, right? So
Mm-hmm.
every Saturday I would go and teach English to a bunch of kids through this organization called Take a Step. It was a nonprofit in Chennai, and I
Okay.
enjoyed doing that. So that was
Right.
also something I did in college. I again like whether I did this keeping in mind that I'm going to apply for higher studies, not really.
Right.
I and that really doesn't help because it's not like anyone has a short answer of what's going to work and what's not going to work, right? You can't be like,
Absolutely.
I'm going to do this extracurricular and these many things, or be like this president of this or head of this. I'm going to get this admin. It's not how it works. And then you're
Correct.
also going to be unhappy during the process. But what, like, in general, I'm a person who enjoys doing a lot of, I need to be busy and I love doing many things at once. I'm a
Right.
generalist in forms. So,
I think your
yeah,
personality suits where you're applying and what you're doing. So That's very
Exactly, right?
important. Do not, I think you should not like force yourself to conform to what they want. As far as
Yeah.
what you're doing interests you, and like it should ideally fit into the bigger picture. You shouldn't have to do anything out of the box.
Exactly. Like just like so I was involved in a lot of clubs in college. In my
Hmm.
like I directed a couple of plays through my theater club. We'd put up like proper productions. I was part of a few of them.
Oh,
I did
fantastic.
handle the Model United Nations Society, which had a conference of like so much budget that you have to take care of, and like 100
Right.
200 kids coming in. And then I'd also volunteered on the side. I like played basketball for fun. It's not like
Hmm.
I'm a great player or anything, but I used to play for the college. And I used to
I
enjoy
think
my
that is
time.
a big deal. But okay.
It's, I mean, yeah, it is I don't know see, here's the thing, right? When you're applying to universities, not, there are going to be people who are like Olympic gold medal,
Correct.
I mean, medalists, or at least like world champions and national
Right.
level people,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
these are not things I would really recommend anyone to do, for the sake of getting,
Absolutely.
because there are people who also don't do any of these things. They just take one thing, stick to it. There are a lot of people I know who've only done, they've decided that okay, they really like machine learning, and they've decided to work on a bunch of projects on that, and even after doing that, they've decided to do an MEM because they're like, I want to switch, or I want to do something different from this role. So that's completely okay. It's just
Correct.
for you to kind of form a story that like once you reflect, you will figure out that there's a story that works for you. Like that should be a reason
Absolutely.
about you doing that like why do you want to do that course, and then when you really think about it in introspect, you will find the reasons.
Correct.
But
I think
this
that's,
was,
yeah.
yeah.
Please, please. Sorry. I have a habit of cutting
No, so
people off. So
this
please
is
go on.
what I think I had done. But if you're talking about like preparing for the application, I did do a lot. While I
Hmm.
technically started my application in November and December, I did spend a lot of time. Like I think, yeah, beginning of November, mid October, I started thinking about whether I wanted to apply or not. So when I was even
Hmm.
considering that, I made it a point to speak to seniors or connect on LinkedIn with random strangers, cold message anyone and everyone who's done these courses. I spent hours and hours in the page of each of these courses trying to figure out if I even wanted to do them, trying to figure out what they had to offer. But in that process, right, I learned so much about what the program was like, what the culture is like, what I can expect. And that obviously helps you make a better SOP in the process. And speaking to these seniors helps a lot. Like just connecting with random people on LinkedIn, they'll actually surprisingly be willing to set up a call with you and speak to you for half an hour. And I had that advantage. Like a lot of people, I spoke to at least one person who got into Columbia, who got into Stanford, and who got into Dartmouth for each of these courses.
Right.
So I had done my research. Like that was I think the preparation I had done for this application.
Got
Um, yeah, but other than that, yeah, everything had already worked its way, earlier. Yeah.
Correct. I think so. Like you said, right? Your SOP is not a story you make up on the spot, right? You look at the back, you look at your own history, like what have you done? How does, how has one thing led to the other? And that's when you identify the story. And believe it or not, you don't have to do anything significantly different to have a story. If you look at your own past, I'm sure you'll figure out that there is a line, there is a thread that's connecting everything, and that is your story. And yeah, I think thanks a lot, Sadhna. A lot of those things were super important. I tell the same to everyone I meet as well. Reach out to people. That is the best way for you to understand what it takes to get in and what the university wants, because both of those are very, very important. Because the university has certain, it has certain morals, it has certain principles, a certain, agenda that they have to fulfill. Like, every university is different in its own perspective. So one university focuses on, say, A, another university focuses on B. And when you talk to people there, you can clearly identify what the theme in that university is. So, Sadhna, coming to the last question, if you're comfortable, would you be open to sharing your GRE, your GPA, and your TOEFL numbers? If that's okay?
Yeah, sure. My GRE score was 333. It was 169 quant, 164 4 verbal.
Right,
Uh, but this was something I'd written like chuma, like simply at the end of third year, like during that pandemic, right?
right.
Post an internship, I had a month to kill, and I just booked a date and I wrote it. So I had used that score that I wrote in 2020 itself in 2023. So I didn't bother writing any other exam
Because
or
it's valid
anything.
for 5 years. Makes a lot of sense.
Valid
High
for five
five on
years. So
that, 333. Yeah. But 170 and 163. Yeah.
oh, okay, okay,
Quant
nice.
was
Yeah,
170. Yeah.
yeah, it was a little annoying. Like I tired out by the end of the math exam, and I actually left one
I
question
think
at the end.
that is like the secret of the GRE, right? The previous format. Now it's changing this the next month. But
Yeah, yeah, but the
yeah,
previous one is just very
it's
tiring, right?
it's a
It's
stamina game, dude. You've got to have the mental capacity to sit through that. lot of tenacity for that. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. I think, yeah, that was the hardest part. Just sitting and concentrating for 3 hours was like, I can't
absolutely.
do this. Yeah. But yeah, and then my TOEFL was, oh, right. TOEFL also something, one thing I would like to tell anyone who's listening is that it's not an exam that you necessarily need to write. A lot of US universities have waivers. Like Stanford, for instance, has a waiver. If you've done your undergraduate degree in English, then you don't have to do that. So check out, like, figure out if you actually need to like write it or not. This was something I also thought about when I was applying to deferred MBA programs. At
Hmm.
that point, I got waivers for all the MBA courses, so you don't need to write your TOEFL at all.
Great.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, for Dartmouth and Columbia, both of these universities that I was applying to require the TOEFL. So I wrote it like a couple of months ago,
Hmm.
and I got a hundred and one sec. Let me just. I, I think it's 116. Yeah, I think I got 116 in TOEFL. Yeah,
Got it.
116. 7. Let me just check. It'll take me
That's
a
that's
second.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
If it's like
116 is what I
one
got.
or yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I got that. And then GPA, I think it was an 8.9 on 10, 8.89, 8.92,
Nine.
between that range. I forgot, and I'm sorry.
Dude,
It's been
it's the
2 years.
same number. I had
Yeah.
8.92. So
Okay.
yeah, okay, that's
Yeah.
crazy. That's sweet. That's sweet. Nice, nice. So I think Sadhna, thanks a lot for your time. I think you have given out very, very good points and very specific points to Dartmouth, points that I did not know because I did not apply for an MEM. So
Mhm.
all those who are applying for an MEM, I think clearly have will get a very good idea of what the what the Dartmouth program looks like and what they can do for their application. Thanks a lot for your time, Sadhna.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
You have a
Thanks
good
for
day.
having me. I hope everyone finds this
Absolutely.
video useful. Yeah. Bye,
I'm
Harshit.
pretty sure they will. Thank you.